Hello and welcome to another edition of the Scoutcast. While FPL takes a break and the world adjusts to COVID-19 lockdown. My name is Joe.
My name's David.
And my name is Andy.
Welcome everyone as we tackle yet another week with no football. But there's still plenty to look over. David, what's happening in the show?
Yeah, as you say, we've still found plenty of things to talk about, haven't we, on site and on YouTube in the last few weeks. So still plenty of things to continue to discuss. So what we're going to do first, we're going to catch up with our teams, find out how we all got on in game week 32, and we're going to reveal our transfer strategies of what they've been in the last few weeks and what they could be in the weeks moving forward as well. We're then going to look at some of the interesting community tournaments that have been going on. There's been some fantastic games out there all created in a world of that FPL. So well done to everyone who's does a great work there. We're going to round some of those up. Quick fire questions. So we're gonna do some of those as well. And you know, I understand they can be about football, they can be about FPL, they can be about anything. So fire your questions in there, and we'll do our best to answer those. So
Yes.
yeah, lots to talk about.
Yes, it's people's chance to really find out what we've been up to. But I know we've been lots of videos and podcasts already been taking place, and this one's really looking at this season. This is what we're focusing on. So we've got lots of other videos looking at best FPL people of all time. We're going to touch on some virtual FPL that's been going on as well. But what we're looking at here is we want to get everyone. We don't know what's going to happen with the season. So we know that we can't be Mystic Megs here. We can't say, oh yes, this is going to happen. But we want to help people get in the best shape they can be for their team. And we've got lots of questions around that, around transfer strategy in lockdown. So we're going to find out what shape our teams are in at the moment, and then find out what we're looking to do during the enforced lockdown. Because of course the game weeks are still going on, albeit with no football. So you can still make transfers each week. So there's lots of options there around that. So let's have a look at some of the questions that we've been having here. So we've loads of questions on this. So Chris Winship, he says, I've not made a transfer in over a month. Am I missing a trick, or are those tweaking their teams missing a trick? It's obviously going to be very difficult to judge form or anything. So we know the fixtures, well, we know that they're going to be fixtures, or maybe not be, but there's definitely, we don't know with form. That's a tricky one. It's like the start of a new season, but no pre-season to judge it. So it is a difficult situation to be in. Wolves are we? Have you been doing a slow wildcard? So that's an interesting strategy that lots of people are doing. And I'll touch on why I'm not doing that, unfortunately, a bit later. Adam Mack, have you been making transfers during this period? And if so, what factors are you using to decide which players to buy and sell? Larry McCormack, what is your transfer strategy? Don't bother, or is it incredibly nuanced and detailed? Stefan Morris, my team is set up for a blank game week that was postponed. What should I do? We've got loads of questions on this, by the way. I'm going to read a couple more out. Major League Shocker, when it all starts up again, should we be staying away completely from our teams that have nothing to play for? Should we just stay away from them? So he's talking about, say, for example, Man City. And arguably you could probably say Liverpool maybe after a couple of games. TLF, what high risk high reward players are we looking at? Players returning, for example, like Kane and Rashford. So in terms of rank, I'm slightly ahead of both of you, but I'm not going to go first, as we usually do on the Scoutcast. We usually whoever's got the highest points or whatever first. So I've been talking enough. Let's go with you first, David. So, what kind of shape is your team in, and what have you been doing transfer-wise?
I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm not interested, because of course I am. But in terms of how what shape my team is, I mean, I kind of forgot until the last few days, because I mean my transfer strategy largely has been to kind of leave things as they are. And that's not because, as I said, I've lost interest in FPL or anything like that. It's more just the fact that I have a wild card to fall back on. So obviously the question, have you been doing a slow wild card? I have thought about it. I may well still do something similar. But as I said on one of the videos we did last week, I'm kind of feeling there's some, we know who's going to play for the rest of the season, but we don't know what configuration that's going to be. And they're probably going to have to completely draw up an entirely new fixture schedule. So lots of players in my team who I have value in, so I don't want to just cast off a load of players who I may want to bring back. I don't want to do that in the middle of April when we don't even know when it's coming back, because, let's say I bring in a few players because I'd like them, and then when the fixtures kind of get announced, it's like actually for the first 3 or 4, they look a bit like, I don't know, like I'm not quite so sure on that. So yeah, in terms of my rank, I'm 280k, which as many people will know, I wasn't exactly having the most enjoyable season, but I've had 4 green arrows in a row, Joe, because I've made no choice. And we sort of, like, some people have wondered, should you be not taking transfers as sort of a tactical thing just to make a little bit of a green arrow? I haven't been aiming for that. This is just a byproduct of doing nothing. And just to let people know the context of, or like what capability you have to get a green arrow for doing nothing for 4 weeks. I went into the lockdown on 280k 595, and at this stage in the lockdown, I'm on 280k 477. Ooh. So I've barely moved. Barely moved. I mean, it's enough to be a green arrow, not a grey circle. But like, obviously, that tactic isn't really gonna, unless it comes down to mini leagues with like sort of like the tiebreaker transfers made or what have you. I can't really see it having that much.
So you've got a wild card left, is that right?
Yes.
Then? So you have a wild card left. Are you tempted to use this time to do what some people are calling that slow wild card? Have you made any transfers at all? And if so, are you tempted to do that? So are there players that you're not happy with, and you think, I could get? I mean, it's hard to tell with form and stuff. But so, for example, looking at maybe long-term injuries, or you just had enough of that type of player. Are you tempted at all, or are you just waiting and see?
Yeah, I mean, the slow wild card, I think I would maybe, if we start getting more of an idea of when the season comes back, I might start looking at it. But having an actual proper wild card to fall back on, I still just kind of like that. I mean, if we come back in, I'm sort of kind of happy to use that wild card for the first game week of the rest of the season. In terms of players who I'm not that happy with, I mean, obviously I'd forgotten I had any Arsenal players. I went away from my team for a couple of weeks. I came back and I was like, oh, look at that, Pepe and Aubameyang. I mean, I'd probably want to get rid of them, but because obviously Bruno Fernandes, it's an easy swap. Pepe to Bruno Fernandes is quite an easy one, and I do think that Fernandes will be really, really decent for the rest of the season. But I mean, again, in terms of the unknowns, I do like the look of Man United. I think they look great. Obviously, we've had TLFs mentioned Kane and Rashford, players who could come back. Obviously, Son potentially back as well. So just be all sorts of players who will be back. My only fear is that there'll be, when we first get back into it, there's so many factors that these Premier League players would have never had to deal with before. As much as, I don't want to say that lockdown is the same for everybody, because it's not, because I know that some people are having a really awful time. And I'd imagine that the Premier League players have got a lot more space to kind of be themselves than we do. But at the same time, in terms of what that means for FPL, they can't train with each other. Yes, they can keep fit, but so I can say, as of my gut call, like, Bruno Fernandes will be fantastic for the start of the rest of the season. But who's to say that Man United are completely disorganised by the time they come back, because like they haven't had long enough to gel together? And to be fair, you could say that about any of the teams. So that's kind of why I don't want to make swathes of changes yet, because there's just so many factors that no one's had to deal with before, which I mean, I don't even know how I would quantify them. I don't know exactly how I'm going to make these decisions, but maybe I could, if the fixtures, when they come back in, they look all right, I could maybe go 2 or 3 weeks into this new period without using the wild card, get an idea of what teams are looking good post-lockdown and what teams aren't looking so good post-lockdown, and then go from there. So...
One player I noticed there is Cantwell, and one of the reasons I've ignored Cantwell in my own team, and I think a lot of other people had, is because there was lots of talk during the season towards the end of, before we got to the break, that he was knackered, that he was a young guy and he'd had one hell of a season, and he'd played and far too many minutes and far under far greater pressure than a young player like that should do. He's good. I mean, he's a fairly mature lad. He knows what he's doing, and that sort of put me off. Now he's the sort of player I might look at, because I have that sort of role, that cheap midfielder, and I may actually make that transfer to get him in, because even though he's in a relegation battled side, it'd be nice, and he'd be one of those players that, if any of them are getting fit, running up and down their stairs and running around their huge 10-acre gardens, then he's the kind of player I'll be up to, because he's certainly not going to be knackered because he's had a nice break. Yeah. Andy, what have you been up to with your transfers? So what sort of shape were you in, your team? And I understand you have actually been making transfers. So yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, I've made a transfer every week. I'm in a different position. I have used my wild card, so it kind of makes sense for me to make some transfers. I do think there'll probably be a point at which I stop doing them. So I've fallen. I was about 331k. I've just worked it out in the week since this all kind of started when we're getting no points. I've fallen 445 places by making a transfer each week. So as I said on Friday, if anybody is not making transfers just because of rank, that is the most dullard thing I have ever heard. If you're not making them because you're not sure or whatever, then that's fine. But if it's just for rank, then
don't do it.
I don't think there is a more dullard move. But so I've made a few transfers. So my last proper one before kind of all the football stopped was Firmino to Aubameyang, and as we know, then the second Arsenal match got cancelled. And basically, my plan since then has been to roll a transfer because we don't know how FPL is going to come back. Are they going to give us a wild card? What will the matches or what will the fixture order be, and all that kind of stuff? I've just decided to roll a transfer because if we don't get another wild card, which I don't. Obviously, we don't know. I don't think that's going to happen because they are letting us still make transfers, so it would make sense not to also give us a wild card. So I want 2 free transfers for whenever this restarts, so I can maybe make 3 or 4 moves for kind of a -4 or -8 if I need to. So I saved in game week 30, and then since then, maybe surprise, I've bought in 2 Man United players. So I've done. So, but I guess overall strategy is to take out the deadwood players. Because although we don't know the order of the fixtures, for some players, we just know they don't have very good fixtures to come back to. So, for example, like someone like Aubameyang has Spurs, Man City, Liverpool still to play, and Wolves and Leicester. So they're not very good fixtures. And to be honest, for 11 million, if he came back and played all 5 of those fixtures first, then I would probably want to get rid of him. But if he plays the other 5 fixtures first, which are Brighton, Villa, Southampton, Watford and Norwich, then I probably want to keep him. So he's not really on the top of my list to get rid of right now. So I've done Jack Stevens out. I'm not sure he is going to be the decider of whether I have a good rank by the end of the season. And I've bought Harry Maguire in. And I think for anyone that is making transfers, like all you can really do is go on the info that we have. Who was informed before the season ended? Yes, it's probably not going to come... all the teams are not going to come back and be in the exact same form they were when it stopped. But that's all we really have to go on. And who has good fixtures. And Man United were in pretty good form. If I'm not going to take the chance of a global pandemic to get 3 Man United players in my team for the end of the season when the football comes back and have a bit of fun, when can I? Like, really? So I bought in Maguire for Stevens. I took out McNeil. Again, McNeil was a massive hero for me in the bench boost. And their fixtures aren't too bad, but I basically had my team set up with 8 attackers that I could play, whereas usually I like to play with like a bench fodder option that I just bench every week, and obviously it gives me a bit more money to play around with. So I got rid of McNeil for Martial, and one of the questions is on, I can't remember who it was, TLF, about are we looking for high-risk, high-reward players? So there are going to be a bunch of players that come back, or should be back by the time football restarts. So Pogba's been out injured, Rashford, Kane, Son, and not necessarily even just the players we'd pick, the players that are kind of surrounding them that might have been injured as well, which could improve them. So I have got my eye on that, but I did bring him. I assume Martial is not going to lose that striker spot no matter what happens, and Maguire just is going to play week in, week out. And then this week, again, so I didn't waste a transfer for game week 33, I did Traore. So he is basically the one that I decided to get rid of as my 8th attacker to Hayden. So that is literally just to free up some money. Wolves fixtures are pretty mixed, and we don't, before the season ended, we weren't even confident Traore was going to be playing week in, week out. So that's probably a move I would have made at some point anyway. So that's kind of my general strategy. Get rid of the deadwood, bring in players that I know will either in form or have good fixtures to come. And although, we don't know the order, like Man United have very few really bad fixtures. So that's kind of why I focus on them, outside of just being a fan. And then, like, there's players like Danny Ings, for example. Southampton's fixtures, look at them now. They've got... I know the fixture difficulty rating is not exactly perfect, but they've got 3 kind of neutral 3, which is Arsenal, Sheffield United, Watford, which are not great, and then Man City, Everton, Man United. So I'll probably get rid of him. And, of course, if the season comes back and they try and complete it quickly, then there's a chance that he's the kind of player that could get rested. But as David kind of mentioned, a lot of these players, well, every single player would have had a lot of rest at that point. So will they be able to just come back? I think, just to answer one more question before I stop talking, because I've probably been going for like 10 or 20 minutes at this point. I mean, one of the questions on should we ignore teams like Man City, and you obviously mentioned Liverpool as well, because they've got nothing to play for. That is surely not going to be an issue. All these players are going to be absolutely gagging to get back and play football. They're not going to need a rest. They're going to get months off by the time they come back. They get the players that are playing in the Champions League and stuff, like Man City. I think they're still in the Champions League, right? I think they didn't play the second game against Real Madrid, right? They're going to need match sharpness, match fitness to get into that. So Pep's going to have to play them. He's not going to. The season's not going to restart. He's going to I got Real Madrid in a few weeks. I just bench Kevin De Bruyne. It's just not going to happen. So I think that is like right now. That's not on my radar at all. I wouldn't be ignoring anyone. In fact, I would probably be even looking more at Liverpool, Man City, because they're generally pre-season or whatever it ends up being. They're going to be the ones that it's like before the season starts, all you have is pre-season and previous form. And we know Liverpool and Man City are great players, so why would we ignore them outside of rotation? Every single player is going to want to get back on the pitch. I have no doubts in my mind about that. So, that's kind of my general strategy at the moment.
I think that's a really good point you raised there, Andy, about the players being like really, really ready to come back. But I think that will probably benefit attacking players probably more than it will benefit defensive ones, which is not to suggest that defensive players have any less kind of excitement to play football. But just kind of going back to the earlier point about what it takes to train a squad. I think I would argue, and I think a lot of people would agree, that you don't coach attacking in quite the same way that you coach defending. There's a lot of individual talented players in a lot of these teams that we all know and a lot of us own, who on the turn of a head can just kind of create a goal out of nothing and get in the right place and exploit a bad defense. But actually, like coaching a defense and keeping it tight over a long period of time, that's drills like repetitively being kind of like inputted into the player. So I kind of think that it's an answer to some of these questions, not any of them specifically, but I do sort of wonder if when we come back, we might see kind of arbitrarily like more goals than we maybe would have seen had this not happened, just simply because I feel like the defenses are going to have more catching up to do than the attackers. So, I mean, in terms of squad structure, people were wildcarding. I would probably be a bit nervous about going big on some really expensive defenders, because even Man City, Liverpool, and maybe even Man United, I think they're all going to struggle defensively, whereas I think the attacking players will just sort of have that freedom a little bit more. So, I mean, I could be wrong, but that's just kind of like what my little hunch I've got about, the differences between those two types of players. And to be honest, Man City are one of those teams that has individual talent. So, I certainly wouldn't be ignoring their big names at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, because if you think, it's like, you think it's almost like, like a rabbit coming out of the trap in a greyhound racing or something like that. It's just, these players are just going to be basically spent 3 or 4 months running up and down their stairs. And that's
exactly.
it. And then
treadmill in the house.
And then
kicking a football to their kid.
Kicking their football to their kid and saying, look at my garden on Instagram. And that's it. So then suddenly they're just going to be like, ooh, football match. Now, it could be behind closed doors. It's, highly likely that may happen, should it come back. But we'll find out, in due course. But even if there's just just one person out there in the crowd in the massive stadium, the likes of Jamie Vardy they're just gonna go like a howitzer. They're gonna be incredible. They're just gonna come out there.
You feel like players like him will be like a rest, because obviously he's very quick and we know he's a great player, but he is getting older. It hits everyone at some point. So that, again, he's another one to have this prolonged break.
Yeah.
It can't be anything. It's good for everyone, but obviously young players just don't need the rest as much. I think it'd be huge for players like Jamie Vardy. You're right. They're going to want to get straight out of it.
I mean, it's going to be frightening if you're watching Jamie Vardy coming on the pitch, because he's just going to run at you screaming. He's just going to be going. So I'm going to put my team up here. So slow wildcard. This is why I'm not doing it, because back in February I was mocked. Those Scoutcast viewers and listeners will remember by Az with my wildcard. I did need to do it myself, and it has worked since then. I reckon I've gone up about, I don't know, it'd be a conservative estimate of about 40,000 places I've probably gone up. So I'm about 65k at the moment, and it enabled me to have a structure, to have a bit more up top, and also allow me to have Salah, De Bruyne, and originally it was Son, but he got himself injured, and so Fernandez there. But the reason is I've wildcarded, so I'm not going to slow wildcard now because I'm looking at my side and I'm thinking, I really did waste my wildcard because from now until whenever football comes back, probably by, I don't know, let's just, for sake of argument, I'm going to say June, I could have had this squad anyway by just doing it really slowly and dullard. And it's really annoying because I'm a real dullard manager. I've missed out on the greatest dullard moment in an FPL manager's history. Their career would be made by this. Imagine that, to do a wild card, but do it over 4 months.
It'll be so on brand for you, Joe.
Painstakingly removing players and I'm so envious of the slow wild
have you
cards.
made no transfer so
I have
far?
made one transfer. I wanted to get rid of Danny Ings for Calvert-Lewin. Because I just fancied Calvert-Lewin more. I just thought Everton looked in a better shape, and I was estimating, looking at the fixtures coming up and the way that Everton was set up, Calvert-Lewin, the form he was in. I just thought, whatever the break, I think I just prefer Calvert-Lewin. He was a bit cheaper as well, and it frees up a bit of money. But one thing that I've been really influenced by was an article by Neil, and I think you had correct me if I'm wrong, David, there was a sort of a poll or a survey of readers saying, what kind of article would you like? And the runaway leader was fixtures. Tell us who's got good fixtures, who's got bad ones. And I've got to admit, that's one I wanted as well. And Neil delivered. And it's a great article to go back.
As he always does.
It's April the 9th, I think it was. But go back on site. And have a look at that. It's an invaluable piece of advice there. So looking at that, so I am quite old-fashioned. I'm form of fixtures. Form is impossible to tell, so we're stuck with fixtures. So let's have a look at those, and that's why it's so important. So first of all, Arsenal, Villa, City, and Sheffield United have 10 matches left. The rest have 9. So you're going to get an extra fixture out of them. So if we're looking at, say, double game weeks, those types of things, these are the sorts of teams you should be looking at, depending on where they are. So we know numerically you're going to get more points, more minutes for these guys, hopefully more points as well. So I'm tempted, even though I've just said about Sheffield United, I'm tempted by Henderson out for someone like Leno, which is a bit weird. But Dean Henderson can't play against his parent club, Manchester United, and that's one of the fixtures left. So technically he's only got 9, Leno's got 10. Arsenal, as Andy pointed out, have got some tricky fixtures, but they've got some great ones as well. So if it turns out they're great ones at the front of their whatever schedule they have, there we go. I'm looking at Arsenal players there because we're looking at the possibility of double game weeks, all those types of things, and they've got more matches. Let's see. So that's something I'm interested in. I mentioned I've got Moy there for Brighton. Move him to Campbell because Campbell fully rested. I do think Campbell is a more attacking player. And we don't know what shape the relegation sides are. The relegation sides have had a reprieve. They were hoping to eke out some points, and then suddenly the season's derailed, and then when they come back again, I don't know what shape the likes of Norwich and that are they going to be like 11 Jamie Vardy's coming out grinning maniacally as they take to the pitch. Maybe Cantwell could be that guy. Let's look at Neil's also looked at home games. Villa and City have the most, so I'm keeping Jack Grealish. Let's go. He's got more pitches, more home games. Let's see. And also he's playing. I won't mention some of the things he's been involved in, but he is certainly. Manchester United have their eye on him, so Baby's playing for that kind of team in the future. I'm not saying he's going to play for United for the rest of the season. I'm just saying he's going to need to be in the shop.
If he wants to play for Man United, he should probably stay inside.
He should probably stay inside. Yes, he shouldn't do some of the other things that people.
We won't go into.
We'll be all too aware of. Fewest matches against the Big Six. This is good. So Manchester United. So Andy, your policy of going Manchester United, just as a neutral, is a good idea because they have got really good fixtures. So they were in form before the break. Fernandez, I do think is key. Let's hope he can continue that form. Amazing Amazing. Rashford's injury should be monitored, I think. I did have Rashford before he got injured. Loved having him in my side, and I'd like to get him back again. Most matches against the bottom half teams. That's City and United. Don't ignore City. Don't ignore United. KDB could be essential, maybe. Manchester United again. And this is something for those like me who've got Aubameyang. Aubameyang's quite a handy price point, because if you want to get Aguero in for City's good fixtures, and we know Aguero's got a hat-trick or 3 in him, then I think that's a good... So I'm keeping Aubameyang with a view to him being Man City, possibly. Let's see. And the weak Palace, poor fixtures, 4 against the big 6. Brighton faced 6 teams in the top half. So for me, Moy to Cantwell looks like... I mean, I can't go full dullard, but I can be as dullard as I can. And Moy to Cantwell, that's a silver medal in the dullard Olympics, surely. Yeah, that's real football. I think our teams are in quite good shape. To be honest, I quite enjoyed this. Even looking at slow wild cards, covet them.
The only other player I think that you've got that I got rid of was is Jack Stevens. Maybe if there was a cheaper defender, you might, because he's only really got 3 good fixtures left. Obviously, it's all going to depend. Like if there's double game weeks or whatever, then maybe that would change it. But he's only got 9 fixtures anyway.
Yeah.
And the only other thing just before we come on to the next thing, the only thing I wonder, and I think this is probably very, very niche, and I do think most players are just going to want to come back and play. But I wonder how much, like the likes of Danny Ings had such a bad injury record over his career. He finally has a great season just before the Euros, and then the Euros gets put back a year. Like that must be a bit kind of demoralising for him, because he's now got to stay fit for a whole nother season and have another great season. I'm sure he's going to come back like every other player and just do really well and want to play. But I wonder if the Euros will have very, very minimal but some effect on some players. But again, it's probably a bit too niche thinking to worry about picking players based on that. But it'd be interesting to see how the likes of Ings comes back, because obviously he's done so well from an injury perspective so far this year.
Well, I think it's good. I mean, it's good. On the Scoutcast, we try and look ahead, and that's what we're doing here, obviously. But I think you've touched on a point there. Looking at players like Danny Ings, you're even looking ahead into next year for the new season, whenever that starts, and those tournaments that have been put back, and those that are playing for those international places. Suddenly, we've been thinking about them this season. We have to think about them a bit less this season, but for next season, we'll go for it. So yeah, you're right. Could this be that Danny Ings is legendary glass legs are no longer made of glass, and could they be no longer made of glass for a whole nother season as well? And it's quite a tantalising prospect. Meanwhile, away from real life fantasy transfers, if that makes sense, there is fantasy football, or virtual fantasy football, whichever way you want to look at it. Lots of things have been going on. David, what's been going on?
Yeah, so a lot of people have been working very hard to fill the void, I mean, obviously the Championship Manager one has been really, really big, and that's been really popular. And yeah, fair play to the guys who've been running that, because what a fantastic idea! And then not even just to have the idea, to execute it, get so many people involved, run the Twitter account. They've got their own little scout as well. We've got some articles on our site, and we've got videos with Luke as well. So we're well on top of that. Very much enjoying that. That's had some good press for a few weeks, and obviously it was on the BBC as well. But in the last couple of days, Ragabolly's brought something out as well. He's been working on it for about a month, but it just took so much tech work behind the scenes. It's only really just started to come out. It's using this sort of similar but much more complicated some of the things that he runs for on any match day when you go to livefpl.net. It's using that, which is basically simming the whole season, this season, from the start. And you basically play it a little bit like Championship Manager. It's all text-based. You pick a team, you get an overall rank. And yeah, that started game week 1, I think, was this particular weekend. I actually, unfortunately, I haven't played either of these games, but I have been making sure that Fantasy Football Scout is covering them extensively. Let's come to you first, Andy. Your thoughts on the virtual fantasy game and how your game week 1 went. I understand that you kind of had one of those weeks that most people are used to in FPL. You got a choice between one or the other of a exciting premium option with a great fixture, and you perhaps maybe went for the wrong one. Is that correct?
Yeah, I know I'm not allowed to say what I almost did because Joe hates that, but
It's what you did do, not what you didn't.
yeah, exactly. But the interesting thing with this game is, like, so yes, you pick your team, and for a lot of people, it's maybe a bit more. The players are obviously known because we've all been playing FPL, and it's exactly the same players. So that's kind of handy. The fixture list is a little bit different, but the kind of like interesting angle is you get to sim matches. Now, I actually missed the first set of friendlies for pre-season, but there were some friendly matches, and the idea is you can, if I wanted to bring in a player this week, let's say, for example, I was looking at a Leicester player for whatever reason, then I could go and sim up to 10 matches with Leicester. And that would kind of give me an idea of one, who's nailed on, who keeps getting subbed off, and who's doing well from an attacking perspective. So I did a few sims pre-season for Man United, because Man United actually haven't got very good fixtures in this game. After the first one was decent, but now they've got Man City, Leicester, Spurs, and Chelsea in the next 5. So it was pretty tough. So I didn't want to double up. So I just wanted one attacker. And I did a few sims. And my sims, at least, and the few I did, Martial came on top. Even though, obviously, I know Fernandes is such a good player. So I did Martial instead of Fernandes. And Martial did return 5 points, but Fernandes got 18, which I think was the highest score for game week 1. And I'm just bringing up my team now. I did go for Van Arnold, though, because he also came up good in the sims. And he got 15 points in the opening day. So he scored and got a clean sheet. So, yeah, it's just been interesting. I like it because the players are well known to me. There's like that aspect of going for players you like and that you know have been good in FPL versus choosing them based on sims. So I think it's probably going to take a few more weeks until I kind of suss out how much I should rely on the sims or not. So, for example, like Mane did well in the sims, but Salah had a lot of attacking threat. And actually, Salah came out on top in game week 1. So it'll be interesting to see if that reverses, whether the sims play out more. Maybe we've got to look at those attacking stats as well. So yeah, it was a pretty good week. I think I finished on 77. I'm like 700 and something in the world out of 2,000. I think odd people have signed up for it. So it's got quite a lot of interest. I think because it's there's no real manual work, I think anyone can sign up at any point. Obviously, you'd have to start from game week 2 now, but if you want something to fill the time. But yeah, my transfers this week, I'm probably going to save. One, I want to work out a bit more how the sims work, and 2, I've got Vardy for the opening. I think a lot of people have done this. Got Vardy for the opening 2 game weeks because Leicester had good fixtures, and then I'm going to swap him out. And I've not got stupidly. I didn't go for triple Liverpool. I did put this team together very quick. I went for just Trent and Mane, so I'm probably going to use the Vardy money in game week 3 to go for triple Liverpool. But you did you start off? Did you do better than me in game week 1, Joe?
No.
I got 77, I think.
Well, no, I didn't. I got just below that. So I mean, this is the crazy thing because it was 70. I think it was 79 or 76 was the average. So if you're looking at single game week average of that, so what you've got is loads of attacking returns, but I got 68 in the end. So yeah, some of my players did really well. I'll put my team up here. So I mean, with your team there, you got Vardy, Van Aanholt. And Richarlison, your big stars there. So similar points tally, but completely different players. So I've got Fernandes there, 18 points. There he is. Salah there. I went for the Salah Mane double up because in all my you run these pre-season friendlies, and they were just getting returns. I mean, they weren't getting spectacular returns, but they were just getting returns all the time. And I just thought Liverpool do start off this game with good fixtures, so give them a go. I wanted Vardy in for those first 2 fixtures, as you said, the good home games, and sure enough, he gets a goal. Jimenez, absolute legend. So I scrimped on defence, and it's obviously cost me there. So my really ultra cheap defence of Stevens, Lascelles, Sionju, and McCarthy. And guess what? I had Cathcart on the bench. And so some other players I've got Mason Mount in, didn't do much for me. And this is it. So this is what it's like. Why I really like this game, because it felt like I was playing FPL. I know it's virtual FPL. I know it's a computer algorithm predicting it all. But fantasy football, real life football, it is unpredictable. But it also has an element of predictability. We know that Vardy's going to score a lot of games. We know the Liverpool players are going to score. We know that someone in Manchester United is going to get lots of points somewhere. Maybe it's Martial, maybe it's Rashford, maybe it's Fernandes. And you get those highs and lows in it. But yeah, I've logged on the first game, and Mbappé, 2 penalties missed. -2. That was a great start. And I got him in as a bit of a make weight to get to afford these other expensive attackers. And I thought, oh my god, am I going to have a virtually disastrous week? So
we're quite used to virtually disastrous.
I know, but I enjoyed that as well, because that's what real FPL is like. When you look at if you're out and you come back and you watch the highlights or whatever, and you see those results, and you go, oh god, can't believe Benteke's missed a penalty. That's reality. And in this virtual world, Mapei. Oh well.
That's what was even better as well, because he missed twice, and that was against Palace, who I had Van Arnold, who'd already scored, so it didn't. Obviously, I was happy with that, but to get the clean sheet as well was just a bit ridiculous. So yeah. And to be honest, like the thing, just for anyone that wants to join it, I know, it doesn't, as long as you look at the fixtures, it doesn't really have to take a lot of work, because you already know the players. The players that are good in this, for the most part.
Yeah.
And I think the next game week's it's every week. I think the next one's next Saturday. So it takes 2 seconds to log on and do your transfers. So it's not the end of the world. It's not going to take up a lot of your time if you're struggling for time while you're sat in your house.
I usually play FPL for overall rank. I want to get as high as I can. In this game, I'm not. I'm just playing because I just enjoy the thing. Doing FPL, even if it's a virtual FPL,
it's a good fix.
It's a good fix
when you haven't got anything else, and it's quite funny because to hear you say that you even miss the penalty misses and all that sort of thing. I mean, me and Az have been saying that because we've obviously been doing something a little bit similar on this YouTube channel where we've been using Football Manager 2020 to sim the season from the point at which it stopped, and then moving forward. So we're looking at slightly different criteria because we're looking at the stats within Football Manager. But it's hilarious how even Football Manager is as unreliable as real life is, if that makes sense. So we've had a couple of weeks where my team's just been getting destroyed every week by such jammy incidences when he's just had some fantastic times. But even though it sucks, I'm enjoying it. The pain is better than feeling nothing, So rather than just feeling numb, having Saturday afternoons where it's just flat and you might be doing enjoyable things, but your emotional state is just a flat line. You want peaks and troughs, don't you? You want that roller coaster ride of oh, there's a goal. Oh, he's missed a penalty. I mean, that's what we play FPL for, is that emotional buzz. So if anything we can find to replace that right now is really helpful. So
definitely.
I found actually on that point, I found one thing that it let me do was getting some players that I would always talk about but never get in. So I remember talking about Van Arnold at the start of the season. I think he actually started off this actual season pretty well. So I got him in, and Richarlison, another one. I don't think I've owned him in FPL this year, even though he's done really well. And I also put Chris Wood in, because any time I look at stats and stuff for Chris Wood, he is always great, and I never have him in my team. So it just allowed me to put in a players like that. The only thing I will say, because I only noticed this late on when I was making my team, is Lundstrom's in as a midfielder. So he's actually gone and put him in as a midfielder, not a 4.9 or 4.8 million defender.
It's graceful.
Yeah, I don't know if I was happy or glad about that. It just meant we had a cheap bench option, though, to be fair, in midfield.
It's just emotionally preparing us for next season, because next season he is going to be a 5.5 billion midfielder, and then that'll be it. I mean, this shirt behind me, it may even have to come down. We'll have to see.
So, I mean, if anyone hasn't played the virtual FPL game yet, there's an article plug on the screen at the moment. It was April the 10th. We got that. Have a look at it. You can get some links in there. And as we were saying, it's something you can dip into, as the season's going on. He's got lots of plans to have really fast. He's got 4 or 5 game weeks in a week kind of situation coming up soon.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Something like that. something quite intense is happening. But he got a rating at the end of each match. Who was the most attacking player? So, for example, my good friend Mapei was the best, apparently. And we've also got, you'd imagine that Salah, Mane, Fernandes, whoever, these kinds of players in there. So you can see over the game weeks as they go who is, consistently, and there's your form, even though it's an algorithm. Even though these aren't real players, well, they're real names, but they're not real. They're not doing real things. That algorithm is calculating there, so you've suddenly got form there. So you don't want to be picking a player that's getting ranks of 1 each week. You want to get ones getting 10 for the attacking returns. My transfer plans. I'm sticking with 3-4-3. This game is goal-alicious, as far as I can see, and it looked that way in the the friendlies that you can organise, and in the real life game. So goals are more fun anyway. So I'm sticking with 3-4-3. Invest heavily in attack. So Vardy or possibly one of my Liverpool midfielders, I'm not sure which one, out in about 2 or 3 game weeks, and I'm looking to get a Aubameyang in then. I think he looks like a good captaincy shout for a little while, for a nice run. Includes Brighton, Newcastle and Villa at home, and definitely keeping that similar structure as well. So I play price points as well, so it's great, this virtual FPL, because it's just like real FPL. I can play these price points here, but there's been other championship managers, there's been some other as well. I saw been getting some national press interest as well. Some members of the FPL community on Twitter have using the 01-02 championship manager game to great effect. Is that something you've been playing, Andy?
Yeah, so I actually couldn't sign up when it first came out, but they reopened it again last week. So I'm in now. I'm making my sheet. I currently have a front three of Alan Shearer, Rebrov at Spurs, although he didn't do very well at Spurs in real life. He's pretty good in the game apparently, and Thierry Henry up front. So it's like a throwback to the past. I got to be honest, like some of the players that are being touted as doing really well, I don't even remember their names. There's like a guy at Newcastle, Dabizaz.
I remember.
I think I pressed that. Yeah, I just don't remember him at all.
Nikos, right?
What's that? Sorry,
Nikos Dabizas, yeah.
I've not even checked his first name. Honestly,
Andy.
I just seen him. But yeah, so that's I mean, that's I've quite enjoyed actually just following it. We talked about on a couple of videos now, but Ian Hart missed a penalty game week 1, which was just hilarious because he was like 80% owned.
That's so FPL.
But that is so FPL. But Luke, who's sometimes on the Scoutcast, obviously does the Sky videos as well. He is massively into that game, like not just from a fantasy perspective, just the game in general. So me and him are doing a video now every week on the channel itself, like a separate one, to just talk about that week to week, not day to day. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm still making my team. I'm trying to figure out the players that are kind of cheap. Nice
I just can't believe you don't have Van Nistelrooy. What's going on?
I don't have any. So this is the funny thing is, usually when I put Man United players into my FPL team, I get people calling me an idiot. I've just put out a team with no Man United players. I'm getting called an idiot, so I can't win either way, whether I've got them or not.
But if you've got the choice, and that choice involves Shearer and Omri as your strikers.
Oh.
Then, I mean, as good as Manchester United strikers have been over the years, they're just not in the same stratosphere.
Well, so the reason I'm getting called an idiot is because in this game they are the best team. They always score the most and they pretty much concede the least. But I'm looking at the fixtures. I can't get them up on screen. I can't get them up on my computer for some reason. It's not working. But basically, I'm starting from game week 5, and the way they've done it is anyone that starts new, you get 1 point less than the lowest team. So you're starting at the bottom. So I'm already playing catch up, and if everyone owns Van Nistelrooy, he's got worse fixtures than Arsenal. Thierry Henry is a pretty good player as well.
You could say that.
I'm just going for the fixtures, and eventually I'll get Man United players in. But yes, it's good fun. I think they might open up sign-ups again, so you can just follow the Twitter account. It's ChampManFPL, and if they open it up again, you can just submit to play. But yeah, it's been good fun to watch, and hopefully I can do all right going forward. I'm sure I won't ever catch Luke up, but we'll see how it goes.
I think it just goes to show. Just from us three, but also just as players, but also those that have been constructing these games as well. Just how creative the FPL community has been in this enforced lockdown that we've got for very good reason that we're locking down to protect everyone. But it's absolutely fabulous what they've been doing. And I've just mentioned Ragaboli amongst many, just using an example. I just think it's phenomenal. But he's just created a game that's really good in a month. That's amazing.
Yeah, there's some smart people out there, that's for sure.
Very smart people. Andy, we've had lots more questions. Do you want to read out some? And also we can dip into seeing what people have been saying in the live chat as well.
Yeah, so I already asked a few times in the chat for some questions. I mean, I've got one from there, but if people want to, I'll look at them as we go. I feel like this first question has been planted. I know Late Rosa asked it, Well, I have a feeling. Somebody who puts the notes together, Joe, is fishing here.
I'll put it in because anyway, you read it out.
Anyway, I'll read it out. Yeah. So late riser randomly asked. I think he wanted us to argue about this. To be fair, because he did put a popcorn emoji. Who is the best FPL manager from the scouts apart from Mark? So he's already telling us Mark is the best. He wants to know who is the best outside that. So Joe, I'll let you go first.
Thank you.
Well, obviously late riser. I think he's put it up there because he knows it's him.
I was going to say that.
That's why he's put it up there. But so I do think him. I do think Torres Magic is a very good manager over the years. Jeff as well. We've got those finishes. Obviously you two, and Neil. I've got to mention and in brackets as well, mention Andy in this because Neil and Andy got hacked earlier this year. Their teams gone, destroyed, and then their team value obviously took a knock from that. So you've got to adjust to that happening, and then also the rest of the season going on. And the fact that Neil has been at the top or near enough the top of the Fantasy Football Scouts Moderators and Contributors League for that long says to me that he's a really good manager because he survived that knock to his team and he's still just ploughing on. And I don't know whether it's made him a bit more patient or he's always been a patient manager, but he has a great track record as well. So I think them. Obviously, I'm going to mention Simon March, who's one of the pro pundits team who's won it. So there we go. Lots and lots of scouts are very good.
A true politician's answer there, Joe.
Yeah, I know. Just mention everyone. Like, to be honest, I looked through it. Like obviously, Joe, your ranks are extremely good. I think I'm always pretty hard on my ranks because I am always comparing them to the people you've mentioned, and I only have 2 top 10k finishes. But I have like one at 10,400. I have last season. I literally didn't finish in the top 10k because I just captained Sterling instead of Mane in the last game. And then I've got a 15k. So like my ranks aren't completely awful. There's just not enough elite ranks. I need another top 5k finish or two. Because I was looking like he's got I think he's got 3 in the top 5k when I was looking through. I'm gonna see if I can really quickly find it here. I shouldn't have done this live. I should have already had it up. Okay, yeah. So he's got 3,800, 817 just a couple of seasons ago, and 2,095. So it's a nice finish in there. But then outside of that, it's like a 37k, a 62k, and a 59. So maybe a little bit of a lack of consistency from Az, but has had some pretty elite finishes there.
It's got a lot of learning to do.
One thing I noticed was
there's
a lot of good finishes. There's a lot of good finishes in this league. Is what I found from looking through people.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm gonna be very definitive. You guys have mentioned a lot of names already. Thank you very much for mentioning me, Joe. But I don't. I'm happy to say I don't really compare. That's fine. I'm a journalist first. That's fine. The one guy I'm going to mention, who's obviously one of our pro pundits, is Tom Freeman, who he's been on a few videos, has done a few Scoutcasts as well. If we're talking elite finishes, I mean, wow. I mean, it's just incredible what he can offer. I mean, last season, 214th, 16k the year before that, 5,867 the year before that. He's had like one off year in about 9 years when he finished 181k. But if you go from 2009-10 all the way through to 18-19, he's finished the top 1,000 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, which is just mad. If we're talking about how often can you finish in a consistently ridiculously elite level, then I personally, outside of Mark, I can't really look past Tom Freeman personally.
Let me read out Joe's here. We got to give Joe some credit. He's got some pretty good rank finishes himself. I won't let him do it. I'll do it. So how many top 10k finishes have you got? Let's see if you know off the top of your head. You must know.
I know it's 7, isn't it?
Yeah, 7.
Because he always says.
Because I always say it. It's on my. I've got it tattooed on my my chest.
7 top 10k. The worst one is 6,800. So not only top 10k finishes, but they're actually top 7k. 4.5, 4,500 roughly, 840 just inside the top 4k, just outside the top 5k, and then so 840 is the best one, and then one more at 1,525. That's what you want. You want the triple figures, and you've got that 840. So yeah, Joe has to go down as one of the best. I'll say it.
Yeah, I agree.
Well,
I agree.
You've
got to be included.
I think of myself in a sort of a West Ham compared to some of the other names you mentioned there, I think are more like, your Manchester Cities, Liverpool's, and I'm sort of, because I've unlocked the top 1,000 achievement, but I haven't unlocked the top 100 achievement, and I haven't I've unlocked the not going below 100,000, but then again I haven't unlocked the achievement of like never going outside the top 50k or something. So I'm sort of quite good, but not like consistent. Really good. But yeah, thanks a lot anyway.
All right, we'll look at the other questions. So I'm actually going to bow out of one of these questions because basically FPL Fairies asked 2 questions. One is favourite alcoholic beverage. Obviously, drink responsibly if you are drinking alcohol. And 1 book recommendation. So I'm going to bow out of the book recommendations. I'll be honest, I do not read pretty much at all. And I really should. I know I should, but I don't. If I thought about the last 5 books I've read, I expect one of them is Fantastic Mr. Fox. So that shows you how much I have read as an adult. I think the last 2 books I read as an adult were Alex Ferguson's biography, which is really good. And I don't know if it was actually his or someone else wrote it, but one on Ibrahimovic, his biography as well, which is also really good. So I guess I've just recommended 2 books there, but that's because that's literally all I've read. And then, favourite alcoholic beverage. So let's start with you, David. And also, I'll ask another question that I'm sure you don't want to say, but I'll ask it. There's a book that I've seen on Twitter written by a guy called David Monday, I believe. I was just wondering if anyone knew where you could pre-order it from.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much. I wasn't going to ask, so we're all helping each other out here. You're letting Joe in on the fact that he's one of the best managers, offering me the chance to do something now. Let's go the alcoholic beverage. I always get people always take the mick for me out of this one. Southern Comfort and lemonade is the one that I really enjoy.
Oh my god, that's what people who don't really like whiskey drink.
I know,
right?
But the thing is, I actually like whiskey. I'm happy to drink it, but it's just if I want to kind of, I don't know, chill with the whiskey rather than kind of like go full out on the whiskey, I go with that.
That's the Coldplay of
I know.
Drink.
But you know what? I even like Coldplay. Like everybody probably hates me now. So
I like Coldplay too.
but it's easier to knock people who like Coldplay. So yeah. Well, there we go. There's 2 of us. I'm very happy about that. In terms of book recommendation, yes, I've got one coming out. I guess I could recommend it to people, but obviously I'm biased, so I won't. If you want to pre-order it, just head to my Twitter. There's a link there. It's a pinned tweet. So yeah, that's there. In terms of a recommendation from someone else, I'm now at the opposite end of the spectrum. Andy, obviously, if you've read hardly anything, then it might be easy for you to recommend something. I've read far too much to necessarily pick one in particular. I mean, I guess I'll just go for something that's really classic because I reread it a couple of months ago and I tweeted about it and it got really big. Like the tweet was massive because so many people wanted to get involved in discussing it. And it's a big one, but I was surprised by how many people hadn't read it, which is 1984 by George Orwell, which is just, as I said, a complete classic. And it's one of these books that's always very relevant because it's about sort of, it's set in the future, even though it's 1984 because it came out in the 40s, in a world, mostly in Britain, where you can't always trust what the government says and what the government does. And there's always parts of the world where that's true. Some might even argue right now, I'm not going to say one way or the other, what my opinion is, but it's always going to be relevant because of the techniques you see the government try in this book. And it's just incredible. So if you've never read 1984 and you're sat around with nothing better to do, once you've played the Championship Manager game, once you've played virtual FPL, once you've spent a bit of time on Fantasy Football Scout, then you can read 1984. And then if you want to read my book, then please do, but it's not as good as George Orwell. So yeah, that's all for me.
What about you, Joe?
Well,
alcoholic beverage and one book recommendation.
I'm going to give one book recommendation, but also an online reading matter recommendation because I feel it's appropriate in this time when we're all becoming more virtual and remote. But yeah, booze, glass of red wine has to be Rioja, I think, would be my one. So yeah, nothing heavy duty like a whiskey, but yeah, like a nice glass of wine. But in terms of books, so the one book I've read recently which has a football element to it, which is Elton John's autobiography. Now I didn't know much about early Elton John, and now I do, and it's great. It's fun. It's a really good autobiography, about someone who's been, obviously massively famous and successful over the years. It's got lots of really catty, bitchy stuff in it as well. But what it's really good about is looking at football, because he was a Watford fan as a boy and he ended up owning the club. And he's one of the great relationships in football was him and Graham Taylor. So it's that great chairman-manager relationship, and there's a lot in there about that. There's a lot about Watford in there. It's a great autobiography, and it's not one I expected to ever read really and enjoy, but it's one of my favourite about music. And online, for the month of April, I like comics, and Marvel online have unlocked for free loads of online comics. So I started on, if anyone's got like a tablet or anything like that, you can read comics online like that. So if you're au fait with the Kindle worlds and reading online, you don't need to see things in paper. I would have that. So I've been tucking into a bit of Spider-Man and Avengers, and it's been really enjoyable. But yeah,
I'm so jealous, Joe. With the age my kids are right now, they're definitely into those characters, but not in the comic sense yet. Yeah. So I would love to have been able to spend my lockdown kind of engaging and all that, because I've got so many trade paperbacks on my shelf. A little bit that way. They're outside a camera shot right now that I'd love to catch up on. So very jealous that you've been able to spend some time reading that, Joe. Sounds really exciting.
No, cheers. Well, that's the Elton John one, or the comics. Yeah, you
all
can
of
as
it,
well.
to be honest.
They're all free. They're all free for April. They've basically unlocked it for April, so that's why I thought I'd mention it.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool actually seeing the amount of stuff that's been unlocked. I think my son's been reading like David Walliams, or not reading it. I think all the audio books got unlocked, so he's been listening to them. So yeah, it's been pretty good. In terms of alcoholic beverage for me, I used to be I'm from the West Country. I used to be a massive cider drinker, and then I moved to Ireland and there was no good cider. I've really gone off it now. I can't drink it at all. It's just so sweet. People were telling me that for years, and now I realise what they meant. So I just beer usually. Like, I give a shout out to a local place, Galway Bay Brewery, who do a lot of good stuff. Like Althea and Full Sail is all good. So that's good. But when it gets to a certain point in the evening, when I've had too much beer, I do like Disaronno and Coke, which is nice. But it's too easy to drink. So I'm like one of those people that I'll only drink like once a week, or maybe once every 2 weeks. But when I drink probably too much. And when you start on the Disaronno, that is not good. Like half a bottle gone type thing. So yeah, that's my two things. The only other question we've got, I don't think there's been any more in the chat, is it's actually an FPL one, which I think I'll just ask if anyone disagrees, because I think the answer is going to be no. And it's George the Spartan says he's got Salah and Mane and also has Trent Alexander-Arnold. Should he keep them all? I mean, the answer is yes, surely, for now, till we know more.
Yeah, might as well.
The good thing
They're the kind of players you'll regret losing, aren't they?
It's not just the players.
I just don't think they're a rush to get rid of, basically.
It's the price. That's why, don't think of the player, think of the price. I mean, if you've got Alexander-Arnold, you've got Salah, Mane and Alexander-Arnold. He's got three of the most expensive players in the game. They can become anyone. So keep them, if you've got them now. I mean, I'm almost tempted to go for that myself, maybe. Because it's quite flexible if you're happy to ditch any of them at some point down the line. They could become anyone. Magic. I think he's got a good bunch of players there. So anything else in the live chat at all? I mean, I've got lots of comments, but no questions as such by the looks of it.
Yeah, no more questions. I did ask a question to Google the other day, which was, can you use a beard trimmer to do your hair? Turns out the answer is yes. Now, the only problem is my hair is very thin, so I've taken some pictures. I'm trying to keep my head back, because if I take any pictures from above, it looks like I'm going bald. Anyone out there that's can't get a haircut and really wants one, you can use your beard trimmer if you don't have normal clippers. Otherwise, no.
How thick your hair is? I've got to say, so my hair is really, really thick.
You'd probably have to cut it a bit first.
Yeah, I really would. Like whenever I go to the hairdressers, they're like, you're like a bear, how thick your hair is. So yeah, if you have hair like mine, be careful. My hair still looks ridiculous because I don't know what to do with it. It's kind of like, at some point I'm gonna have to bite the bullet and give it a trim. But it means trusting the wife, who is not awful, but she doesn't like having the responsibility. So yeah, the beard's easy. That's been sorted. But
I'm about a month away from what my children refer to as the Frasers, as in my hair looks like Frasier in the first series of Frasier, just sort of thinning on top, but just longer, and Yeah, not good. It's not a good look.
As long as it never gets to Sideshow Bob level, you'll be fine.
Sideshow Bob level. It used
I'd
to
love
be,
to see that on the Scoutcast.
yeah,
The next
the
Scoutcast. Joe
Frasers,
is.
or also I used to refer to as the Wogans. The late great Terry Wogan used to have the longer at the sides type of hair, and it's not a good look for a man my age. But yeah, so I think
You can pull off. You can pull off. I can see it there.
I think we've covered a lot of the questions that
We do have
people
two more
sent.
questions.
Oh, we do. Good.
Two more questions. Yeah, because now people have seen we're doing it. I think they're. So again, I think one of them is just the straightest, or I think it's already been answered. You can correct me if I'm wrong. It says, will player contracts affect the end of the season? As far as I know, they're either discussing or they've already said it'll basically be extended.
Yeah.
So if a loan contract's due to run out in June, it will just extend to whenever the season ends. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, June just becomes. Yeah, they just put June in, but they basically mean end of the season. So it's.
That would have made it super interesting if, like, I don't know, Man United could have finished the last 10 games, but they could buy players. The amount of money they got, that would have been ridiculous. But yeah, and there's that one. And then one more FPL question. I think we can finish on this one. Is it too expensive to have Doherty, Alonso, and Trent Alexander-Arnold at the back? What do you think?
For me. I'll go back to my hunch from right near the beginning, where I would be really reticent to have that much money in my defence coming back in to a start of almost like a new mini season, where arguably the teams may not have had that much time to gel defensively. Wolves are a team that have been quite good recently, but they've always been a team that are capable of sort of playing quite tightly but still conceding. Chelsea, I would say, are the same. Now, obviously, you can maybe get attacking returns out of those guys, but I don't know. I feel like we could come back into the start of this new season. I think we could, if you spent a lot of money on your 7 attackers who are going to be playing against these defences who've been kind of out of practice in terms of shape and discipline, etc. I think you get more value there than with those big defenders. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm always favour of balance there. I think it's really good to have Alexander-Arnold because he's not only a good player, but as mentioned about the price point there, and have one other like a Doherty, like, you know, or Van Aanholt, or some sort of 5.5, 6 million-ish defender. I think that's good because that's a good price point. You can move around, you can free up money as well. You could get a nice cheap 4 million player and suddenly have 2 million to play with. But having 3 and a player like Alonso, who he was looking good towards the end of the enforced break, but is he going to start again? Is he, will he have that sort of run again? I don't know. But I think 2 rather than 3. Do you reckon, Andy?
I mean, I don't think it's a bad strategy. I don't know. I mean, we might see. I know David made a pretty good point about it'd probably be easier for attackers just to come back. But I mean, Alonso's points per match, I know people were talking about it just before the season ended. It's been incredible when he's played this year. Like, he's been one of the best. So if he's nailed on, obviously you get him for a cheaper price than the Liverpool boys as well. It's just going to be hard to tell because obviously he wasn't for so long. He would be my only worry. So Trent, I mean, is an obvious one. I think there's no reason to not have him. But yeah, I'm just looking now. So Alonso, so he's played, it's really quickly, I think he's not obviously played a lot of matches. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. He's played 10 matches, which is not a huge sample size, but it's not tiny either, and has 7 points per match so far. And in comparison, Robertson and Van Dijk are 4.9. So that's a full 2.1 points, which I know sounds small, but over the course of the game, that quickly adds up. Obviously, if it was 10 remaining games and he continued at that level, then that's 20 extra points, or 18 or 20 extra points, and even a bit cheaper. And then that's even higher than Trent, who's 5.7. Obviously, Trent's done it over a lot of games. But yeah, really, if Alonso's nailed on, I can absolutely see people still going there. He does have some pretty mixed fixtures, though, so he really would be one which is fixture dependent, whereas I think you can just put Trent in overweight. So I don't think it's necessarily too much. I just don't think I would go for all 3 of them probably.
Yeah, so I think we'll wrap that up now. I think we've covered a lot of real fantasy, if that makes sense, and fantasy, Hall of Mirrors, fantasy, virtual fantasy, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, David and Andy, thanks so much for joining me. So the aim of this sort of lockdown special Scoutcast, if you want to frame it, and others that we air will be, help ensure your team is in the best shape it can be as we look at the current season and prepare for whenever it resumes as well, and also catch up on what the community have been doing. And the community is so creative, so ingenious, absolutely in awe of some of the things they've been doing around the Championship Manager game, and of course Ragabolly just creating a whole blooming new game as well. But for now, it's a goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Goodbye all.